when I was leaning down to plug my laptop into a PowerPoint on the ground, he had taken a photo and said a comment. And then when I got into the lift, I said, you are to get your phone out now and delete that photo. We have come so far in stamping out inappropriate behaviour in the workplace. I know how hard this can be to stand up and say, that's not appropriate.
Welcome to the She Sells podcast. I'm Sarika, the host, and today I have with me Vanessa Bosnich from Spotlight Reporting. She's the Chief Sales Officer there, and I'm really excited to talk about how we are breaking through barriers in sales and leadership. And so welcome, Vanessa.
Lovely. Thank you for having me here today, Sarika.
Vanessa, you lead global sales efforts and drive strategic growth. Really passionate about mentoring the next generation of sales leaders.
Absolutely.
And what I would love to open up about is, we like to start here with not just what your job title is, which is Chief Sales Officer, but who is Vanessa behind the job title? And tell us a little bit about your career history and how you've come about to be in this space now.
Yeah, lovely. So thank you. I definitely have an innate passion for being around people and generating ideas. So that has always been part of me. Even since I was a little girl, I was always coming up with awesome ideas and wanting to get everyone to sort of collaborate around what we could do in my very lovely traditional street in Frenchs Forest in Sydney. My dad was always really passionate about us three girls. I'm the youngest of three girls, going into being businesswomen as we grew up. My dad was an engineer. He was always very passionate about us sort of, stepping into the business world. So that probably was a great foundation for us. My dad ran his own engineering firm and my mum was very involved as well. So we saw a lot of business and we always spoke a lot of sort of very adult conversations even when we were little. So I couldn't wait to leave school and get into the workforce. I did leave school in year 10.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did a business certificate at TAFE.
Okay.
So that was a decision of mine that my dad wasn't very happy with at the time.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to get a job for Toshiba selling facsimiles on the North Shore for a couple of years.
Yes.
And then I was lucky enough to land a job in an account management sort of team coordinator for Bankers Trust. So that's where my investment banking journey started. And then I studied business at uni part-time in my late teens and early 20s.
Okay.
So I was quite lucky because I had a little bit of a head start on everyone else.
Yes.
Because I had already had quite a few years in the business world, sort of before I even turned 20. So, yes, I have, I've always sort of been someone with a lot of energy. So I think that's something that really resonates with anyone in sales. No one would ever describe me as lazy. No one ever would.
Yes.
But that has to be something that I have to be careful of as I get older because I realise that not everyone has as much energy as me. And hopefully I will continue to have as much energy through my life.
Yes.
But everyone has to, I think now being in the leadership role, I have to accept that everyone works at their own pace and their own style and to really foster all of those different talents across a team or across divisions within a business as well. Yeah. So, things that I have always known about myself, I'm now proud of, but quite aware of, to ensure that I can bring, the best traits and then, recognise other people's traits as well.
Yes.
So, yes, I think from my point of view, I've always had a lot of energy, but always had a good understanding of other people having a voice as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm someone that really dominates a room.
Okay.
I think, I'm very cognizant that it's important for everyone to have that equal voice.
So that's really interesting because not dominating a room and being in leadership, people probably associate leadership with dominating. But take me back at the beginning of your career where you talk about being lucky to land those roles. What do you think it was about your personality and the traits that you had that helped you get those roles?
Yeah.
And then also How different was it back then with regards to being a female wanting to get into sales?
Yep.
And were there any challenges that you faced back then that you probably wouldn't see today?
Absolutely. I could sit here for hours if I was willing to be incredibly frank and candid about it. But I'll keep it PG. Yes, absolutely. Things went on back in the 90s that would never happen now. So, comments in the office, copious drinking and late nights and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many funny stories, and anyone that I've got a very good friend. She and I worked together for a couple of years together in Toshiba, and we're still best friends.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes if I was to, we would sit up late laughing at the things, or probably actually quite, devastated about the way things would go on back then. But look. In those days, the thing, I mean, as far as I'm, thinking about that young woman, I probably had a lot of get up and go. I had a lot of determination. As I said, I couldn't wait to get out of school, and my dad sort of said, you must do some tertiary study, and that's when I spent the year at TAFE.
Yeah.
But again, after that, I couldn't wait to get out there.
Yeah.
So I think probably what came across in the early stage in what was a sales-dominated environment was that I was passionate and determined. I was always very professional as well. Funny enough, my mum actually ran a ladies' boutique for many years on the North Shore. So we were always really lucky because we had a lot of very nice clothes.
Yeah.
So I always dressed in a very professional manner right from the word go.
Yeah.
Probably because I was around my dad and, a lot of adult people, I could probably hold my own even though I was quite young at the time.
Yes.
And sometimes if practices did go on that I didn't agree with, I definitely stood up and said, that's not acceptable,
Okay.
and then I'd walk out of the room or I would pull someone in.
Yes.
Your heart would be absolutely racing at the time. And of course, in those sort of situations, you'd think, God, I hope I don't lose my job.
Yeah.
But I was always one to speak out, and that's certainly the advice that I would give to any young woman. And we may get there further in this podcast, talk about that more, more detail. But as far as sort of putting myself in my mind of, why did I choose that career path and what was my mind back then? Yeah, I'd say probably determination.
Okay. Yeah. I can definitely agree with you on that. That's been something that I can resonate with. If you could pick one story that could highlight, perhaps I know that you mentioned there were things that were said that you laugh about back in the day. Have you got any sort of anecdotes around that where someone said something and it just really caught you by surprise and how you handled that situation?
Yeah, there is one that springs to mind. We were going after a big account for quite a while. I was the one that ended up securing a meeting with the CEO and a couple of the execs for that very large national firm.
Yeah.
I was incredibly excited that I had secured that, and I was excited to go in and present the product and talk about the solution and outcome within that business. However, when I reported that to my manager, he said that he would handle it. And it was sort of like the boys' club went in, and I felt quite upset about that at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't speak out. I probably, hindsight, probably in that situation, I probably should have.
Yeah.
I've said that I spoke out about other things, but that was probably more about inappropriate behaviour, more so than I didn't speak out so much when it was more about this is business and this you're not part of this level now.
Yeah.
When I was younger, they actually lost the account, and years later I won it back. So
wow.
Yeah, that was
That is
an interesting
amazing.
outcome, and that's something that has stayed with me. And I think now the more that we can bring the next generation on the journey to even just be part of that, to learn from, even if they're not necessarily the leading voice when negotiations are going on, and you know, you can get quite deep in technicalities. For them to still be a part of that, to be learning from it, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And that is not just in sales, it's across every industry. I work extensively in the accounting industry now, and accounting partners, it is now vital for them to be the ones that are skilling up and including their younger staff in advisory and strategic modelling meetings.
Yeah. We talk about accounting, investment banking, and tech. And I know from my own experience, very male-dominated spaces. When you talk about that feeling of exclusion and not being involved in the deal once it crossed over the line, was that the only time that you experienced that and feeling like that there was the boys' club?
No, there's absolutely been many times. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's been many times of that. And look, I would speak up, you know, across a boardroom table and those sort of things. But at the end of the day, I would back down, because I've always been of the belief that you do the best for what the business believes is best for the client.
Okay.
So I think back then I had the belief that, it wasn't the best thing for me to be involved in that with the client now.
Okay.
You know, I had to pass that deal on to those that could operate it better than me, is what I thought at the time.
Yeah. And I guess now today, do you feel like it's, obviously you've progressed in your career and now you're in a leadership role. Do you feel like the dynamics have changed, specifically, say, in the last 5 to 10 years, around how women have more of a voice at the table, and some of the commentary you might have experienced back then, if it was happening today, would it be treated differently? Would it be, you know, would there be, would it sit as well as it did back then? You know, I feel like I've been in situations. There was one story that I had where I was also winning a lot of business from our main account, and it was project after project, and I was there all the time working back and forth with the client in their offices and then coming back to my team, and we were basically building a bigger team because we were getting so many projects. And there was one lunchtime where I was there, the only female on the team, and we were having lunch internally, and one of the guys joked and said, "So who have you been sleeping with to win this amount of work? What's going on there?" And everyone thought it was funny. My thing there is that, do I laugh along with the joke because lads be lads? Or am I going to stand my ground and then be like the person that couldn't take a joke because she's female? Right? Really difficult sort of situation to be in. Lucky for me, I have enough dry wit and sarcasm to sort of poke the bear back. But it felt so uncomfortable. And I remember at the time, like, my heart racing and thinking, is that what they all think? You know, is it not just because I'm really good at my job? You know? And so that was a thing in the back of my mind, even from then on, then thinking, well, she's getting all the work because she's doing something extra, which is just so disheartening, because I worked my ass off.
Absolutely.
To win for the business, to win for the team, to make sure that everyone had a job, that we had enough projects to keep the P&L going. So yeah, that definitely comes to mind as something that was said out loud, and I wondered if that would be something that other females have experienced.
Absolutely, yeah. I've definitely had comments like that. I had one probably 2 years ago, quite similar to that, and it was in a business meeting.
Yeah.
And I won't go into the details, but when we walked to the lift, he had taken an inappropriate photo of me when, I may as well share, when I was leaning down to plug my laptop into a PowerPoint on the ground. And yeah, he had taken a photo and said a comment. And I laughed it off because the client was standing in front of us at the time. But when I got into the lift, my heart started racing. And I then had to present in front of about 40 people.
Oh,
and then when I got into the lift, I said, "You are to get your phone out now and delete that photo." And he said, oh, it's just jokes, just jokes. And I said, no, you are to do that. And I think we have come so far in stamping out inappropriate behaviour in the workplace.
Yeah.
However, I do like to think of empowering us women, and I know how hard this can be, is in your situation, and I've been in, many of those situations, to stand up and say, that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Instead of things festering and then you go away and you might think about it for days or whatever. And that's not always easy. But as a mother of a teenage daughter, I would always encourage my daughter to stamp that sort of thing out right at the coalface of the situation. I had another time many years ago, another situation like that, and I handled it immediately, and that it was one of a major exec at the time, and walked away. And I said, that is inappropriate. Do not do that. And I've looked back on that moment quite a bit since, and I thought I was actually quite brave doing that at the time, because the hardest thing is to shut it down.
Yeah.
And I guess that's something that I would really encourage is if you can find that courage, is to stamp it out immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because now that I'm the age that I am, I can look back on those scenarios. But first of all, you're dealing with a range of emotions.
Yeah.
You're shocked. You then have to speak up and figure out, how am I going to speak up? There's an element of bravery, but then to keep it professional and not emotional. And there's a whole bunch of comments that can come back at you in that situation. Oh, you're just overreacting. Calm down.
Yep.
And I've experienced exactly those moments where, you kind of think, do I say it or not? And stand my ground, because they're demeaning what I've just said. They're lessening my feelings. But I only know that now. Back, even 5-10 years ago, it would have been something that I may have suppressed.
Yeah, it does. It takes a huge amount of courage to speak out in those moments.
Yeah.
And you do go a bit shell-shocked as well.
You do. If looking back at your younger self, or, a lot of the listeners here would be experiencing something quite similar, how would you recommend the way to handle that in terms of the tone and the way that, you say, delete that now, and keeping it calm and professional? How would you suggest in terms of handling those situations?
Yeah, I absolutely would keep it as succinct as possible, but quite commanding. And we can speak later about your voice and the command that you hold.
Yeah.
And to say, that's not acceptable, delete it, or, I didn't expect for you to say that, or whatever. And then if it means that you have to go to HR, or, the avenue that you need to take. But, yeah, I can understand it does take a huge amount of courage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You've had a remarkable journey in finance, in sales, and now leadership. Was leadership always the goal for you? Did you see that that's where you wanted to end up, or did you find yourself drawn to it over time?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I definitely don't think I used to, like in the early days, thought I'd be a sales leader. Maybe I thought that I wasn't good enough, or, I probably didn't see that journey early on. Whereas I feel like I have stepped into the role in a very natural way. So it has been sort of a really natural progression for me.
Yeah.
I would say, and it probably wasn't until maybe late 30s, 40, that I started to think, that I could be making more of a difference. Yeah. And sometimes, I know I shared this with you earlier, that I started to think that sometimes I learnt more from mistakes, like watching other people's mistakes, than them fostering and nurturing and guiding me.
Okay.
So I think I sort of took that on, and then I started to really start to think about what sort of leader I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And some of that was stemmed from the mistakes I didn't want to make that others had. Yeah.
And so what would you say the kind of leader you are today because of seeing those mistakes and trials and tribulations that you witnessed?
Yep.
How has that shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, I think definitely a collaborative and trusting approach. So I think also understanding in the early time that you're onboarding someone, to understand what their real traits are and the way that they naturally want to operate, instead of trying to shove them into this is the way we do it here. I think everyone coming with their own personality, their own flair for their own role, and then, for them to be able to implement that into their patch. For them to feel like they have a real ownership of their patch. I mean, sales is so much about, our own target market.
Yeah.
And I think to allow them to feel like they are the real owners of that within a business.
Yeah.
I think supporting as well and being there. I've had some roles where I've seen the boss for 2 hours, like my direct sales leader, for 2 hours in the first month. And I think that it is important for new starters to know who their manager is and to have access to that person and to have access to their expertise. So for them to be able to readily share that, I think is so important.
Yeah.
To allow someone to find their own feet. I mean, I don't know if I want to say make their own mistakes, but to trust, to give them the wings to be able to, find their own feet.
Yeah.
I think as well is really important.
Yes.
And also, as I said earlier, be the one that speaks last. So to allow everyone to have the space to speak first. And that also enables people to generate their own ideas. If you're just the one that's dictating what we're going to do and this is it and these are my ideas and everyone's going to do what I said, then you're not actually drawing out the goodness of other people's talents and vision, really.
Yeah, I love that. Something that you mentioned there was around focusing on people's strengths and harnessing those rather than, dictating or shoving a certain type of way. Have you ever had an opinion or a lens on experiencing different types of salespeople and in hiring, say, a male or a female salesperson? Are there any attributes that you see more so in modern day sales around what a woman can bring to a sales role that is in her approach?
I don't necessarily think that. I think that every human stands as a freestanding human on the planet.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any real gender differences. I mean, some people can be incredibly dogmatic and opinionated, but that can be female or male. It's not necessarily a gender particular. So I would say that, sort of broadening that question of have I seen different types, definitely there are a lot of people that think sales is just I'm going to I want to always think of a different word here, but vomit my idea, vomit on you what we do.
Yes.
And then are you going to buy or not?
Yes.
And I think it's so important to allow your client to do really 60% of the talking in the first instance.
Yeah.
And I always have a little monitor in my mind, probably in this as well, to never speak for longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I find that really hard sometimes when I'm actually standing in a room and I've got a lot of slides to share and I get so sick of my own voice.
Yeah. I actually have the same framework where we say the 80-20 rule. The client should be talking 80% of the time.
Right.
And 20% of the time you can talk, but also ask really good questions.
Yep.
And that's really interesting that you have that 3-minute rule, because I also say that to my clients in training.
Yep.
You know, we're very much in an environment where people feel like they still need to pitch, and pitching to them still means standing up there and doing the tap dance.
Yep.
And it's not that way anymore. People need to feel like they're being heard and understood.
Yes.
And you can still position yourself as an expert by saying less.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example right from the beginning. I always start an interview by telling the person about myself for about 2 minutes, 20 seconds. And then I ask them to tell me about themselves. And I have had some people that have spoken for, I think the record was 28 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
In the beginning,
28 minutes.
In the beginning of an interview. He spoke for 28 minutes.
Wow.
Yep.
Didn't get the job, I assume.
No. So, I mean, it's a shame actually, because maybe if he had come on, we could have worked with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess not being able to read the room and knowing that this is too much, then I think that's something that's quite important.
You've spoken a bit about overcoming the fear of speaking up, especially in a male-dominated environment, and talking about what was the turning point for you in building your own confidence and speaking with conviction, even before you were in a sales leadership role?
I would say maybe just maturity. Yeah.
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 I think it's a slow burn, isn't it? You slowly realise I'm no longer afraid of saying what I really think and what I really feel.
Yep.
I saw last week Gabor Mate was in Australia.
Oh, right.
And he said that the biggest illness out there is not speaking up for yourself.
Yes.
And for a long time, even from childhood up until, you know, my mid to late 30s, I would say that I would reserve actually speaking my full truth. But I mean, fortunately for me, I now have my own business. So I'm not speaking as an employee of a business. So if I want to write that LinkedIn post and say how I really feel, then I can, because at the end of the day, it's my own reputation and my own business. How have you seen that play out for you in terms of being an employee in a business? Where do you feel like you still have to reserve your true feelings sometimes, and how do you get around that?
Yeah, good question. Look, I do think you do, and I do think that that is the world of professionalism that we work in. There's always an element of, having to probably be reserved. I have been very lucky in the last few years that I've worked with people that I feel that I can pull up when I think something has to be implemented, or this, you know, that decision should definitely go. And I think it's just really important approaching that with the research and the evidence to back what you are batting for.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
I was very lucky at the fintech startup that I worked at for 4 years. I had a very close rapport with the founder and CEO there, and he would laugh at me because sometimes I would pull him into the boardroom and say, "We're not doing this," you know, or something like that. And he would respect me for that. He knew during those years that I was sort of the eyes and ears of sometimes the things that he didn't necessarily recognise.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have that trusted rapport, but also to always come with the evidence to back up what you're batting for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that just stands for anyone in a professional role, really.
Yep.
I would love to talk a little bit more about, in terms of in sales, successful initiatives. And can you share an example where in your roles that you've actually had a creative sales campaign that's really stood out, and that it's generated more new business? And tell me if there's anything that stands out for you creatively.
Yeah, sure. So there's no doubt about it. The more we implement AI, automation, the online world, the more important human is. And it really is. And I think it's really resonating across all of us, especially when we all came back from COVID. And I'm quite an excited, touchy-feely kind of person. And I just, yay, like even meeting you today. And it's like, yay, we get to be together.
Yeah.
So I think that any campaign now that's going to have that human element is very valuable. Our CEO and founder has written a book, which he is very well respected in the accounting industry, but particularly in the aspect of accountants having higher business acumen skills and becoming trusted advisors.
Yeah.
And the book that Richard has written is always the most popular merch at any convention we go to.
Wow.
And I have encouraged all of the sales agents when they are on the road to pop in, even if they haven't had success getting in contact with that firm, then to pop in, leave that the gift of the book, and even just a lovely handwritten comms note, you know, something we used to do 20 years ago.
Yes.
And we do find that's quite a lot of cut through. And they do then take us seriously that we are the experts in this transformation piece that accountants globally are going through now.
Yes.
And a tangible human approach and a gift with that, I think is always the best cut through.
Yeah.
Definitely. You can go and, you know, do an email EDM campaign to 2,000 people and you're lucky to have, a 5% click through.
Yeah.
Whereas now a human approach is always so much more valuable.
Yeah.
We took about 30 clients late last year, partners from large accounting firms, down to Nick's Seafood at Darling Harbour.
Oh, nice.
And we had such a wonderful time. It was a really great vibe.
Yeah.
And I'm in the process at the moment of developing a lot of content, a lot of it around AI for accounting. And all of those accountants are more than happy for me and the team to go in and share the content, and that comes from the rapport that was built up over the lunch. So yeah, it's that 80s, the 1980s style still
It
going
really
strong.
So much so. And I think that, you know, we're all hiding behind our laptops, sending those emails, doing the LinkedIn.
Yep.
And, you know, even picking up the phone. And there is such a massive resistance to it. I mean, first of all, there's just so much noise out there. It's not just you and the other 5 businesses that are similar to you that are going after the same decision makers, but every other kind of business is trying to speak to that C-suite. And, you know, an average decision maker is receiving around 100 touch points of cold outreach a day.
Right.
Right. And they're just, we call this recipient fatigue. I mean, you're a decision maker yourself, right? How much outreach do you get on LinkedIn
Yeah,
and
a lot, yeah.
emails and cold spam and everyone's trying the AI and the personalization and the automation. But we've found this, that the whole week we've been up here in Sydney and hand delivering and writing the personal note and doing that as well. And the conversations that we're having just by doing that, obviously there's a ton of research before we do it. We're not just dropping off to anyone.
Yep.
But it really does show that next level of thought and care and physicality. Like you physically went to their office to do that.
Yep.
And if you only have, you know, 10 to 20 or 30 big accounts that you really want to go after, we say invest in doing that. But there are, I mean, gifting policies, but with the book, that's a fantastic idea because that also builds personal brand, thought leadership, and it has that physical element, but it actually matters to the client that you're trying to speak to.
Yeah, definitely. And the funny thing is, I mean, you know, books aren't cheap to print now. They're very expensive.
And the time and the effort to write that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do believe the books that have been handed out, that version of the book, as opposed to the downloaded version, I'm guaranteed the books have been read so much more than just reading the PDF on screen as well. So I think we all love a tangible book in our hands still.
Yeah. And do you use, it's Richard, isn't he, the founder? Do you use Richard's profile in other ways to generate more engagement? Does he do public speaking? Are there, you know, dinners, awards, you know, things like that? how are you seeing that actually generate more brand awareness and obviously leading into the sales pipeline as well?
Yeah, definitely. Richard often does webinars, and that we get really high rates for that. He is very respected because he has done the same journey as now what we're advocating for, and it's very proven.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that he's, the founder of a successful global software company. So yeah, we do put him at the front quite regularly.
Yes.
But he is also someone that likes to share the limelight.
Okay.
So yeah, he is happy for us to
Perfect founder.
Yeah, definitely. So he's very good like that. We have to be mindful that sometimes the content that he can stand up and share in a very convicted way of conviction doesn't always work. For instance, for me, I've never worked in an accounting firm, so yeah, you have to sort of mix it up a bit, change it up a bit. Because it can't be so much from that dictator sort of viewpoint. Yeah, whereas Richard's been there, done that. So he can really speak, as that leader. So, yeah, but absolutely we put him forward when we need to. He came to the VIP lunch late last year. So, yeah, I think a lot of the partners, all the prospect partners, we're very excited to meet Richard. So, yeah,
it does put him in that sort of dare I say, like celebrity status. You only get to meet Richard in certain occasions, and it gives that VIP feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
To even, existing accounts and retention. So it's really great that you're utilising, I guess, such a public-facing founder and someone who's happy to do it is really fantastic. There are definitely a lot of businesses out there that don't have such an active founder. Are there other ways that you have seen work really well where you don't have a founder who has written a book or is happy public speaking, and any other specific campaign tactics that you've seen work outside of that?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think it's important for any business in the fintech business that I was involved with. We had an advisory committee, and they would often speak at our events and those sorts of things. So you can have other advocates in the industry. We have just gone into a partnership collaboration with an AI expert now that's going to come with me and has written some content encouraging accountants to lean into AI and not be so scared of it. So yes, absolutely, I would encourage any business to have really probably 3, 4 or 5 industry advocates, that it can be sort of a quid pro quo, or they can, work for you as a consultant to promote your brand in the service that they are offering as well. So yeah, definitely partnerships and advocacy groups are becoming more important than ever. Yeah, and that's what we've really found cut through. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on being gold, platinum sponsors at events, but we find that having a much more targeted approach has a better cut through for us at that top end.
And what I really love about that is, I keep saying this, people buy from people, right? So yes, you could slap your logo on an event, but you're actually putting your money behind advocates and voices in the industry. So these are people of expertise that people, your ideal clients and your prospects will look up to and go and say, well, actually, I trust and believe, and that's a real person. And that is something that they can build a relationship, not a logo on a stand. So I think it's really great that the investment in thought leadership and leaders in the space and using it as part of your growth strategy is super important. We're seeing on LinkedIn the next generation, everyone's investing in personal branding. So to be able to take that and apply it in a corporate setting, I think that is something that I encourage people to invest in as well, and finding those voices. We do deal with a lot of founders who are shy about being in the public domain. So that's really great advice, to find advocates that you can essentially bring into the fold.
And exactly, I was saying to someone actually in an interview the other day, because he he actually admitted in the interview that he felt he might be having a bit of imposter syndrome because he hadn't worked in the cloud accounting sector. And he said, I'm not quite sure. He was being incredibly honest, admittedly, which I respected. And he said, and I shared with him that it's, it's not you going into the accounting firm telling them how to run their accountant. It's run their practice and hope for transformation. It's about the content that you can bring and deliver. And as you get traction in your role, you're meeting so many different accountants in their firms that you will start to develop a good understanding of what goes on over there. And accountants love knowing what's going on with other accountants in their area. So, you can then come in that challenger sale, not only knowing what other accountants are doing, but knowing across the industry what tools they're implementing, how are they, finding growth, how are they changing their pricing structure, that sort of thing. So, it's I think it's very important. I mean, one of my favourite books is The Challenger Sale. If anyone hasn't read it, I really do recommend everyone to be able to come in with that educated approach. And then the firm gets excited. Yay, we've got, Brian coming in from Spotlight and he knows and can educate my team. I mean, they could probably get some CPD hours from, the guidance and mentoring and the content share that we're coming in with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that because I think someone who feels like they don't have enough knowledge in an industry and feeling that imposter syndrome, we as a business, actually, we represent many different kinds of industries and businesses within those. So we could switch from mining to pharmaceutical to healthcare to beauty brands and automotive. But I could have the same person switch from one account to the other purely because we've built a framework. Right. So the key to that framework is actually asking really good questions and having enough of a spiel to be able to articulate a thought or a pain point that that client might be feeling. So, and actually a lot of industries are feeling quite similar in their challenges, but you just need to pick up on certain terminology. And we have the world at our fingertips to do the research. We now have AI that can interpret so much documentation. So if I wanted to find out what's happening in the mining industry, I could just download a few reports, chuck it into AI, use our framework, and be able to act like an expert within days. It's so, phenomenal what we can do. But the basis of that is just having the confidence to do it. And, that saying of fake it till you make it. Right? For the longest time, I was like, I didn't like the idea of that, being fake. But I think in sales, that has come in so handy to just, start with a bunch of questions. If I was to ask an accountant, say 5 accountants, the same set of questions, they would probably all use very similar language. And all I would need to do is pick up on the top 3 buzzwords to sound like an expert in my next conversation. So listening, I feel like, is a really powerful tool in asking questions at those early stages. So I'd love to talk to you more about account-based marketing and also the role of marketing. Because you as Chief of Sales, you very much have quite a marketing lens to everything that you're talking about. Tell me a bit about the friction that you may have experienced in the sales and marketing relationships, like departments being quite separated, and where you've seen it work and maybe not work, and how you would, if you had a blank slate, for example, how would you build a sales and marketing function to work together in enterprise sales today? So definitely I think a lot of businesses still today, they work in silos. Marketing's over here and sales is over here. The best situations that I have seen is when they very much work as a collaborative team. I had a situation at Intuit where the marketing representative would come into our sales meeting every Monday, let us know what campaigns they were running for
for us and then get feedback on the campaign they ran the week before.
Wow.
And it was always awesome because everyone would be able to share with Sarah the positives of the campaign, and she would come in with stats as well. And then we could collab on what we would love her to do for the next week. And it was a real approach that we were really all working together for the betterment of the business and the growth. So definitely when the marketing team are constantly giving sales the analytics behind the campaigns and the sales being able to give the tangible feedback and be heard.
Yes.
So the more the walls can be broken down between sales and marketing and being, working together. I also do think it's very important for the marketing team to understand the product, to understand the clients, to potentially come on some client meetings or at least, watch a recording of a demo, that sort of thing, to understand the pain points that we do suffer from at the coalface, and then for marketing to be able to tweak their campaigns when they understand, what actually is the real thing going on out there.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me I've been in Sydney for a few days now, met with several global businesses, and just asking the question, whether it be to sales or marketing, could we get you both in the room? And people's faces drop.
Yeah.
And they just seem like very hesitant, resistant, or that's just not happening.
Yeah, right.
I still find that really fascinating because, some of the practices that we have enabled for a sales team is if the sales team are on the phone or in meetings with the top brands or the top clients out there, even existing clients or new ones, if they are asking a set of questions that marketing has given to them to enable better messaging, better go-to-market, is that landing? What is our ideal clients comparing our business and services? What are they comparing it to? Are we actually addressing their pain points or their beliefs in our content that we're pushing out there? So it's really shocking to me that there's so much separation and friction in that even today.
Yeah.
Does that need to come from the CEO level down to really encourage and foster a collaborative approach? Should the CEO start sitting in sales and marketing as one team and call it a revenue team? What do you see that becoming in the next few years as well in terms of seeing the dynamics change?
Yeah, it definitely has to come from a top-down approach. I think that can be more about a culture of a business as well.
Yeah.
So, teams very much working in silos.
Yeah.
I think we have seen a lot of the marketing machine become automated.
Yeah.
And I actually think that is not necessarily a great thing because it disconnects sales more from the tangible plans and outcomes.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think really the answer is, and I've seen it done very well in some businesses and not so great in others, for the teams to work as closely together as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that definitely has to come from the top.
Definitely. And I think it's really interesting how if you ask a marketing person what makes this a good lead and you ask a salesperson what makes this a good lead, you're going to get very different answers.
Yes.
And that is kind of the crux of getting teams working together.
Yeah.
Do you have any other stories or examples of where sales and marketing weren't working well together and what glued them into work? Perhaps it was a campaign or something that you've seen work really well.
Yeah. So, it is interesting what you were saying. Exactly. Marketing sometimes can think, oh, I got you 500 leads. Yeah, but only, 10 of them were valuable. So, the campaigns.
All the time.
Yeah. The campaigns that are always the most targeted, that do put investment behind it, to have that cut through and to position us to be the educated voice in the market, I think, is always the best outcome.
Yeah.
So I'm always into succinct. So I think anything that can be as succinct as possible to pique the interest and then to open that door for clients to go, I think I could look at that. So all of those sort of, very, very succinct but clear branded campaigns are always the ones that I believe have the most cut through. I can't believe, like you've already spoken of, so sometimes so much content can go out but no one's actually saying anything.
Yes. Yeah, and there is, I met with a global company, their whole APAC marketing team, and they said, we've been pitched to by many agencies. We do not need content syndication. If that's what you're going to pitch, we may as well finish the call now.
Right.
And it was music to my ears because it's not what we do.
Yeah.
But, there is just like I was saying before, like decision makers are receiving all of this outreach, but there's a shit ton of content out there.
Yes.
How is one supposed to digest all of that?
Yes.
And if everyone's doing the same thing, how are you even standing out in all of that noise? So it's definitely something I can really empathize with the marketing teams to not have access to the sales metrics, the data, the conversations, the pain points, really getting, if you could get into the CRM and read some of the notes and hear some of the patterns, it might just be that one thing that switches the marketing plan up.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's such a tricky thing, though, because both teams working in silos, that's just going to cause a world of just lack of information on both sides. But the enterprise company is pushing out more content. Have you seen any pieces of content that have just, aside from the book that you mentioned, that is getting more cut through these days because everyone's saying do video. Are you seeing anything unique and different happening in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just about to launch our third Global Advisory Trends report. So we have produced that and given market sentiment. We've had about 1,500 accountants reply from I think it's like 7 different countries, which has been a really good mix. That has been very fruitful. So the information that we gather from that, we then include it going on into roadshows to share it before we fully release it to the market. And that has proved very fruitful. From then us sharing it on LinkedIn, sending it out to accountants, giving a little bit of a taster and then sharing with the accountant. I'd love to be able to share more of what, your associates are really thinking and feeling and implementing in this space. So I think more and more we're seeing those sort of thought pieces, the white papers, the reports. A lot of people are doing that now. And I mean, it must be fruitful because it has been for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talked a bit about marketing and the role of marketing becoming very automated. And then on the other side, we've got SDRs and the outreach component. I'm hearing a lot of noise around this that with AI and automation, those roles will potentially become less and less required in the next 10 years. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I picked up the phone just last week and it took me probably about 45 seconds, which I was a bit embarrassed to not actually pick it up earlier. It was an AI voice, yes, trying to sell something to me. Look, I mean, I'm quite a traditional person anyways, and, as a mother of 3 kids, I do worry about where the jobs are going to come from those entry-level jobs. They're the sort of jobs that youngsters can come out and, learn so much from being in the environment. and learning how to be articulate, learning to have the confidence, learning how to deal with rejection early on as well, and then brushing yourself off and continuing to make calls.
Yeah.
It really does bother me about where we are going to end up and how many jobs there are going to be for the next generation. It does. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. And in terms of talking about the concern around, AI automation, and how did you feel, by the way, when you heard that AI voice? What did that bring up in you?
Yeah, I hung up immediately and I thought I didn't see myself ever taking a cold call in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we all face the AI voice now if we're calling into a particular big institution. But probably the first thought I had was, I can't believe it took me 45 seconds to realise that was an AI voice. So, yeah, I was probably a bit disappointed in myself because I'm quite good at kind of picking up on things. So, yes, that was the first emotion I had. Yeah.
Do you feel like you feel a bit more distrustful of voices on the end of the phone?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are getting to that though. I mean, we're feeling now that we can't even trust, photos of people or or even did that person write that content?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had one of my team members reach out to you. Was there anything in that particular conversation that stood out to you in terms of a difference in how many, I guess, calls you get on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. I did think what piqued my interest. I think when I read, I think I ignored the first one and then I looked at the second one.
Yeah.
I probably was inclined to be engaged because that person had a great and real looking LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And then I could click through and see yours and so on. So, I think, and again, it's adding that human element, isn't
really
it?
is. Yeah. And that we find that people will stalk you on LinkedIn before they take a meeting or a call or anything else.
Yep.
So I think that as much as LinkedIn is quite noisy and a lot of people are oversaturating with their sales pitches, I do think it's important to build your network and your credibility on LinkedIn.
Right.
So important. But I have one question for you about the topic of AI taking the jobs and the fear around that. For the generation that are coming through, what would you recommend to them to do to set themselves apart and really stand out?
Yes. First thing that comes to mind is to be able to speak in a confident way with conviction. And I think that can be something that can absolutely be learned. I would always encourage someone to go to the YouTube channel Ask Vin.
Yes.
We were speaking about him earlier.
Love it.
So he is absolutely fantastic. I think that it would take someone quite a while to start to be able to change their speech that they can speak in such a way. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
I think it's someone that really thinks about their personal brand.
Yes.
So your LinkedIn profile has to beautifully match your resume. Your resume is going to look quite new and dynamic. I cannot believe how many resumes I look at. Even yesterday, I had to go through 100, that they were, very old-fashioned looking.
Yeah.
So I think having that very dynamic approach right from the beginning is really important.
Yeah.
I would always encourage someone that if they see a role on the LinkedIn jobs and they recognise what company it is, because sometimes you can't tell straight away if it's coming through a recruiter, to go to the careers page of that company. Most of them are listed on their careers page, and to do a personal direct reach out. So those that I receive like that, and there are not many, There's, if we advertise a role and then, might be 100 applicants on LinkedIn, only 2 people have reached out to me directly.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's still that 2%.
Definitely. It's still really low of people that actually show that little bit of initiative.
Yeah.
I would still always encourage someone to dress in a professional way for an initial interview, and to look up other interview tips. There's an awesome fellow that he has interview tips, and he does scenarios about how to really bring quantitative results to your career experience as well. His name is Anthony Stagg on YouTube. I'd really recommend any young salesperson to have a look at his videos as well.
I would love to talk for hours with you, but I really appreciate you spending this time with me here today. And if anyone would love to find out more about you and your role, where can they find you and look you up?
Yeah, absolutely. So on LinkedIn, always open for people to reach out. That would be great.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarika. It was really fun.